folks. I am Praxilla Taurina. I live in the Kingdom of Artemisia. That is mountain time for me. So right now it's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, right around nap time. I didn't intend this to be right around nap time, but that's what happened. So if if I start to drone and you're getting bored, shout, wave hands, something, but it shouldn't happen because this is some fabulous poetry. At least I think so, but I might be biased because I love poetry. I also adore this particular period of poetry because of what it is culturally. We'll talk about that a little bit, and we'll just read some great poems. As stated earlier, if you have any questions, you can put them in chat. You can also unmute yourself. I love discussion, and I am more than happy to talk about that. If I don't know it, I will tell you I don't know it. And anyone who does know it, knows something and has something to put forward, please do. I love discussion and I adore learning new things. That's part of one reason I teach, is because I get to learn more that way. So we are going to be talking about 16th century Italian female poets and love poetry, because it was a huge part of what's going on in the middle to late 16th century, specifically in Italy, because that happens to be where I like to do my research. I have a major thing for the Venetian printing industry. My persona is a Venetian courtesan. I tried to start out as something different, and that didn't take. So this is my happy place. Just to let you know about my personal interest in the subject, I am named after a lyric poet of the 15th century BCE, Praxilla of Sicyon. She has her own meter, which is a really difficult to try to write in, because I tried to write in it one day and went, this is stupid, but it's still really cool that she has her own named meter. And it is a brachycatalytic ionic trimeter. Try saying that 5 times fast. It is stressed, unstressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed. And then you write that in the meter. But not much of her work lasts, but she was known as one of the 12 muses on Earth, along with other Greek poetesses like Sappho. She had her own idiom, sillier than Praxillus Adonis, because in one of her pieces, she talks about, she's asking, the narrator is asking Adonis what he misses: the sun, the moon, pears. And the joke is cucumbers and pears. The joke is that people were like, these amazing large celestial bodies like the sun and the moon, but still thinking that pears and cucumbers are worth missing. So I don't tend to think Praxillus Adonis was silly, but it was an idiom, and as a result of that idiom, she sticks with us. So I think she's somebody worth knowing about, which is why I have stolen her name, and Praxilla Taurina. She wrote both drinking songs and dithyrambs, and as a result, she is one of my heroes, and the reason that is my name and part of my persona. So we're going to talk about why there was a rise of female poets in the 16th century. There's not necessarily more, but they are certainly much more available. Part of that is the printing press. You have in Italy, between 1500 and 1600, you have over 1,300 different presses. That's not 1,300 works of printing, that is different presses. People have their own printing press and are putting works out there. It is an amazingly vibrant culture. It happens to be one, interestingly enough, centered on immigrants, and so people were immigrating to Venice and the Venetian area for reasons, things like the sack of Rome and the French invasion of Italy, people are moving and shifting about a lot. And one of the great ways early on, because the Italian industry is not heavily, it's not heavily taxed. It is not heavily legislated. It is easy to get into, in that if you have the money, you can print. And they start out by printing things like small one sheets and moving on from there. And so as a result, you have all of these printers who are looking for things to print. And part of what they end up printing, because it sells, are the voices of women. And a lot of those women are coming out of the salon culture, and they are courtesans. They are highly educated women who have made it there because it's, again, because they're making money out of it, by having a education in things like Greek and Latin and other languages, by writing erudite pieces of verse and things like that. Later on, they become more ecclesiastical, but between 1550 and 1563, we're getting about 5 books of poetry by women a year happening. And most of that in that 13-year period tends to be love poetry. It is wildly popular. It has become a thing, and it is a huge active part of the culture. You also have a huge rise in female literacy. Female literacy at this point in the 16th century in Italy is 13%. Now that doesn't sound like a big number, but it is. It is a much larger number, and that is female literacy. Men's literacy is at about 30%. So you're starting to see it trickling down from the highest ranges a little bit further down into culture, and people are buying books and using them, reading them, and as a result, because there is this demand and things are being purchased, they're printing more. 15th century beginnings of female classical education. There's also an astounding book that I absolutely adore, and it was put out by the printer Tagliente, who is a calligrapher. He is a calligrapher in Venice, and he has a series of different books, of educational books that he puts out. He has one that's all about writing letters, and he has examples of different letters you could write. And he puts out a book on not just regular letters, but he has one specifically that is how to write love letters. And my favorite book that he puts out, well, my favorite book is an embroidery book, but that's my bias there. But the other one that's fabulous is a how to read book, and it is aimed at women and servants. And basically the idea is that you read this book, you spend about 15 minutes a day reading it, working with it. It's sort of the hooked on phonics worked for me sort of a thing, where if you just use this book 15 minutes a day, you'll be reading in 3 months or less. So instructional stuff is happening. We also have, again, the humanism in salon culture, and the popularity of Petrarch and writers who are writing in Tuscan rather than in Latin, which definitely ups the amount of people who have access.
Excuse me, may I ask, the how to read
Certainly.
book, was it how to read Latin or how to read the local vernacular?
It's the local vernacular.
Great, thank you.
There's a huge, like I said, there's a huge surge in like basically how-to books, and if you are interested in that subject, there is a fabulous book put out by the University of Chicago Press called How to Do It, and it is a survey of the literature of how-to books. And there's everything from the most important thing, which is how to conceive a son, but all kinds of different how to do things. It was a big part of of what was being printed. So these educational books are happening, and we also get a lot of poetry being written and being published. The first I just was discussing this a little bit earlier on in the class I was teaching earlier today. The first book there was the anthology of entirely women's poetry was published in 1559 by Ludovico Dominici, and it had 53 different women poets presented in 237 pages with several of their poems. So it is something that is out there. It is part of the culture. And we're going to look at, I mean, we're not looking at all of the female poets by any stretch of the imagination, but I picked a few of my favorites and a few of my favorite poems, a few of my favorite short poems, because I wanted them to be accessible and something we could read quickly, because a lot of them are longer works. So we're going to talk about Laura Botaferri. This is, again, when I say this is this, there's often a question of whether this person is actually the person in the portrait, but it is often associated with her at least. This is Bronzino. Her dates are 1523 to 1589. She was legitimized by her father, married and widowed early. Her second husband was a sculptor, Bartolomeo Amanati. She was friends with Bronzino. She was not a member of the Florentine Academia, but she belonged to others. That was a specific snub, which is why I mention it. But she was a well-known poet. Here's one of her pieces. Enveloped in cold hope and hot fear, in dubious peace, I live in turmoil. I shun death, and yet deprive myself of life, at what's triumphant and defeated. Now I stop, now I go backward, now push forward, I go ahead. Now slowly, now quickly, I keep going. Now how many sheets I write, then throw them away. Now I reveal myself as I am, now I pretend. I cry, I laugh, I blush, and I pale. Now I love myself, now I hate myself. Now I lie on the earth, now I fly through the heavens. So that sometimes I don't want, I reject what I want. I hurt myself and I console myself. Living in such state, I die. That is one of hers. Most of these translations are all coming from, I'm hoping that I have put the slide in there. They all come from Shining Eyes, Cruel Fortune, just because I think that is, while I have minimal ability to transcribe Italian, I certainly cannot get the nuances of poetry. So I am using them from that. I recommend that highly. Another book I discussed this morning, which was here somewhere, and it is Italian Female Poets, and I think I've included it in the bibliography. If not, I will post it a bit later. I'm not using anything specifically from that book, but it is a fabulous one if you are looking for Italian female poets in translation. The University of Chicago Press also has a fabulous, fabulous series that is Other Voices, where they have published a wonderful selection of female writings. They're not all poems, but female writings from female writers from about the 14th century through the 18th, I think. But there's a good mix of 16th century poets in there, and well worth a look. This is Veronica Franco, who most of us have at least heard of. She's the courtesan that most people have heard of. Her dates are 1546 to 1591. She published Terracina, as well as her collected letters in 1580. And she was sort of the standby always hostess for Domenico Vigne's salon. So lying alongside of you tenderly, I would have you taste the delights of love that I know so well. And I would give you such pleasure that you would find yourself satisfied, or even more completely in love. I become so tender, so charming when I find myself in bed with a man who makes me feel loved and appreciated, that my pleasuring exceeds all former delights, and however tight I had seemed the knot of love, it becomes tighter still. Here's another love, Vittoria Colonna, one of the just massive correspondents, important literary figures. She's lauded by intellectuals, well-known friend of Michelangelo. He wrote her sonnets and sent her drawings, and the first edition of her poetry is published in 1538. This one isn't really so much a love poem. Sorry, I am using a slideshow from a different class, but she's still worth looking. So we're gonna skip past her poem since it isn't love poetry, but she did certainly write some. Although a lot of hers is more arguing in the querelle de femme, or the question of women and their ability to reason, which is another subject. So here we have Tulia Diaragona. She's dressed as Salome. This is a portrait by Moderato de Brescia. Courtesan from 1505 to 1556. She's the daughter of a cardinal and a courtesan. Well educated. By 1527, she's the center of a salon in Rome. Then Rome gets sacked. She recovers. She picks herself back up, and but she's professionally ruined in 1531 by a gentleman known only as Gianna. She moved to Ferrara and meets Girolamo Musio, and they exchange sonnets. And then she moves to Venice, and then to Siena, and then to Florence. Large works are the Dialogue of the Infinity of Love. In 1546, she is pardoned from sumptuary law because she is a poet, not a courtesan, which I still think is fantastic. She actually wrote to both Cosimo de' Medici and to his wife, Eleonora de Toledo, in order to become pardoned from that sumptuary law. She moves back to Rome, and her major published work is Il Macino della. I'm not going to tell you the Italian because I'm just going to mess it up, but there it is in print, which was published 4 years posthumously, and there were 3 editions of it. And what I've decided to do is give you her sonnet to Eleonora and her sonnet to Cosimo. So her sonnet to Eleonora, when asking to be pardoned from the sumptuary law, is, "How shall I address you, woman or goddess? For such beauty and virtue shines in you that your divine splendor is more brilliant than the brightest flame. I have the happy thought of writing about you to express my thanks and esteem, but neither pen nor human voice can reach to where my aspiring heart rises. I know that all my good fortune comes from you, like the light at dawn of that star that rises in the east before the sun. But in the end, my humble verse can never attain such nobility. Let my heart requite you rather than my words." And in contrast to that, here is her sonnet to Cosimo. "If the ancient shepherds scattered roses and blossoms in the temples and perfume with incense the altars to Pan, it was to make the nymphs sweet and loving to their lovers. Oh, my lord, what kind of flowers, what lovely aromas can I offer worthy of your name, and the many great gifts and favors that you constantly shower upon me? Surely there is no temple, no altar or gift of such value that might equal the value of your generosity. Thus, may your breast, where your virtue lies, be the temple, your wise heart the altar, my soul the sacrifice, if you will accept it." So it's a combination of flattery and proving her worth as a poet. So I find these fabulous. Another poet out there is Isotta Bremabate. Here's a picture of her a portrait of her by Moroni. There are actually several throughout her life that were painted by Moroni. Not much of her output survives, but there is a fabulous collection of verse written in her honor that is out there. She's very well educated. She wrote in Latin, French, Spanish, and Italian, and married to Gian Girolamo Grumelli, who we know really well from his portrait of a man in pink. We've seen that picture quite frequently. So that'll show up in a lot of people who are interested in garb, and they are a combo. And here's one of her shorter works. Sublime though always and burdens my heart of other thought, like the brilliant sun lightens clouds, shows me the truth path to heaven. This alone rules my breast and creates desire, forms rose and violet words, as changing as April on a majestic sun. Now, if heaven and nature wish that the sun be within me, who is powerful enough to take it away? However much cruel fortune might oppose this, she can never challenge the mindful care of heaven. Here we have next Veronica Gambara. Her dates are 1485 to 1550. She was hosting a very large salon, which is referred to as the Muses, at her mansion in Bologna. She was the daughter of Count Gian Francisco Gambara, married to Gilberto X, the Count of Correggio. Incredibly well educated, she founded a literary academy in 1520. She writes love poetry and political poetry. And again, that's important that she is writing and well enough to write love poetry, that love poetry is an important enough genre that it is being written. She does end up ruling Correggio after the death of her husband in 1518. And then in 1528, she moved to Bologna. Some of her work was set to music, which is also fun. Now that hope which once made me ardent is gone, it hurts me less because I understand that nothing endures. Gone now is hope. The illusion once kept me on fire with hope. Now, taking my misfortune as a joke, it has left me weeping and loving and yearning with fierce unending passion. Stronger than ever it leads me, straight and inevitably to death. Gone now is hope. I did hope, and this hope nursed me with lovely warmth. Now no more hope have I, and my soul wishes, craves only to cry, and prays for death to stop its pain, for my heart, once its happy dwelling, has lost all hope. Gone now is hope. When he was my guide, what I had seemed trivial. Without him I am lost and dead. Every trifle seems unbearable. From the time to this I have had little happiness and great anguish. From being attended to him, this reward alone keeps me going. Gone now is hope. My fond sweet hope has fled from me, alas, and leaving me has taken away my ardent heart with tired life, so that frightened and deprived of all hope, not living yet, I live, entirely without hope. Gone now is hope. Next up, we have Chiara Maturiani. She is an interesting individual. She sort of caused people, she really nurtured this idea that she was a prophet, that she had a view into the future. She was affluent but not noble. I tended to identify with revolutionaries and was very much determined that she'd be acknowledged as more than her gender and more than her class. That she wrote love poetry, which was patterned after Petrarch, but she also wrote war poetry, which is unusual, religious works. She did Latin translations and other forms that are not often used by women. And she lived into her 80s. just a fascinating character. If you have a chance to look more into her work, I highly suggest it. There is a complete compendium of everything she wrote that was put out again by Ludovico Domenici. He published all of her work, and definitely worth a look. And I believe that that one is available from the University of Chicago as well in English. Sweet-smelling laurel, which heaven imbues with such rare and lovely attributes that your green and honor-giving leaves need never fear summer's heat or winter's cold. If the great lord of Delos in the opulent riverbank where the clear river bathes your roots be forever adorned with your branches that cover you with verdant hue, then bow your lofty crown to me, that I may scent your leaves and with happy thoughts rise to heaven. Let your undying veracity flow into me, so that singing sweetly in my verse, I may change myself into a swan. Let's see, next up, I guess Barstampa, 1523 to 1554. Her father was a jeweler. She did have some education, but her father died early and her family kind of fell on some hard times. They moved to Venice at age 8, where she and her sister were both performers, musicians. They were the center of a literary salon. Her sister Cassandra did that as well. They are associated with the Accademia Dubioso, and her her nickname under that was Anaxilla. That was quite common for parts of these people that are part of these academies to sort of take on a persona as part of it. She was incredibly prolific, wrote at least 311 poems, but only about 3 of them were published in her lifetime, but they were published posthumously by her sister just after her death, actually, and then republished some more, and then republished again. And again, that's happening right in that 1550 time period where love poetry by women has become a big thing. So that's sort of why it's happening at that point, in addition to the fact that she just happens to be a fabulous writer. For the sake of love, I live in flames, like some kind of salamander or other strange creature that lives and breathes in fire. My delight, my desire is to live ablaze, yet not feel the pain, not caring whether he who set me afire pities me or not. Hardly had my first love died when love's torch again began to burn in me, more intense than ever. And I do not regret my ardent passion, as long as he who has taken my heart from me is happy and content with my love. All right, here we go. I love this woman. This woman is fabulous. Tarquinia Molza, 1542 to 1617. She is the only woman ever to be granted honorary Roman citizenship. They thought that she was so amazing that she was given citizenship. And here's the little blurb about when that was put through. Although the Senate has never accepted women in the ranks of citizenship, it is resolved that Tarquinia Molza of Modena be numbered in the ranks of the most noble citizens with the title La Unica, never before bestowed on anyone in recognition of her singular virtues and merits. She was a musician. She was a conductor. She was part of the Concerto da Dawn. If you are not familiar with the Concerto da Dawn, just this fabulous rabbit hole that is so worth looking at. It was part of the court of the Gonzaga d'Este. They had a group of women musicians, poets, players that were part of the court, writing outstanding literature, playing fabulous musical works, and it was all women. Totally go look at it. She's just a great person. interesting as all get out. She learned Greek and Latin and Hebrew and philosophy. She was a lady in waiting to Margarita Gonzaga de Este, and then later on she was banished for fraternizing with a Flemish composer. She was also bisexual and has some of the most beautiful work written to women by a woman out there. Were there tears on your rosy cheeks, my lady, the day I saw you, like pearls shining on rubies, and I sobbed with the passion you aroused and the feelings you inspired. When between tears a laugh broke out, we, as the saying go, felt water and fire at the same time. We immersed ourselves in fire and burned ourselves in water. For the lover is tossed between flames and waves, nor can mortal power defend itself when fire drowns and water sets aflame. Okay. Let's see, here we have Moderato Fonte, also known as Modesta di Pozzo. Her dates are 1555 to 1592. Her parents died of plague when she was a year old. She was considered a child prodigy and raised by her grandmother, but mostly raised put in convents because grandma didn't really want to be right there. Not a lot of education, but got her brother to repeat his lessons to her, and she read a ton. In 1581, she wrote and performed a musical play. She's also known for 2 large religious poems. Her husband refers to her as Femina Doctissima, so basically the doctor. She wrote some amazing stuff like The Worth of Woman, wherein is clearly revealed their nobility and their superiority to men. And her most famous work was published 8 years posthumously in 1600. And here we go. Women of every age have been endowed by nature with great judgment and spirit, nor are they less apt in revealing with attentive study the same wisdom and courage with which men are born. And since our bodies are made of the same substance, we eat the same food, speak the same way, what difference can there be in courage and intelligence? It has always been seen, and there's always some women with the desire, more than one of them has been successful in warfare, and taken away the rewards and the applause from many men, and thus in literature and in every undertaking common to men, women have succeeded, and do so now. So men have no right to be envious. And even though there are not many in the ranks of the worthy and famous, this is because they have not aspired to acts of heroism and virtue. Gold that is hidden in the mine is no less gold because it is buried. And what is taken out of the ground and used to fashion something, it is as precious as all gold. If a father set his daughter at birth to some task equal to that of his son, whether he put her to learn something on the liberal arts or in military squadron with her brother, she would not be inferior to him. In carrying out whatever task may be, she is raised to do other things, and it is not deemed worth of education. So, let's see. Let's see, we also have Laura Terracina. This happens to be a picture by Grazia di Pistola of St. Michael slaying the dragon. If you look down there at the dragon, Laura Terracina is the face of the dragon. She tended to rub some people the wrong way. 1519 to 1577, incredibly prolific. She had 8 volumes published in her lifetime of poetry, plus an additional volume after, and quite a bit unpublished. There are well over 200 of her poems that currently survive at the University of Florence that were never published. Her major theme is injustice to women. She was part of the Accademia of the Incogniti in Naples with her pseudonym as Fibia, and she was a career poet. That's what she did. This is not a love poet, but it is my favorite. I see the world askew. I see it senseless. I see every virtue abandoned and the arts held in disrespect. My talent might just as well be buried. I see that hate and envy have taken hold of friends, and I see that faithlessly goodness has been betrayed to evil, and heaven is intent upon our destruction. No one stands up firmly for the common good. All speak out for themselves. While every heart is filled with trivia, I see this, and seeing it, I even hate myself. So that disgusted, I would like to see either myself or the whole world blind. And that was not where I intended to end. There should be a couple more slides there that don't seem to be there. But the point of this is I want to point out just how many female writers are out there. And when we're looking for pieces to perform for outstanding love poetry, I highly recommend go looking between things published between 1550 and 1563. Go look at some of these outstanding female poets. Go have a look at what they're writing, what they're putting out, because it's fantastic. Any questions? Didn't mean to quite run down that way, but
is that a question, James, or just a thumbs up? I think it was
looks
just
like
a thumbs
just got
up.
some discussion. All right, but let's see what's going on here. Well, thanks for listening to me, babble and read. I think that there's some absolutely fantastic stuff out there, and we're getting more of it all the time. A lot of it is published in Italian, but you can find a lot of the stuff that is in Italian available on Archive and Google Books and the Gutenberg Project. Project Gutenberg rather, if you just go looking for some of these names, and as a result, you can run across them. Again, I cannot recommend enough the University of Chicago Press's Other Voices. I believe the University of Toronto also published some of those volumes. I've got the Barstampa. I have several of the others, and just great works. I also recommend highly Shining Ice Cruel Fortune, which is again where a lot of these translations are coming from.
There's a question in chat. Do the poems tend to rhyme in their untranslated form?
Sometimes yes, more often not. They're concerned with meter and stressing and unstressing. And it will depend on the form, because they're using a huge variety of forms. So, but for instance, like when you are using a lot of, because of the particular types of language, for instance, if you're writing a ballade in French, it's so much simpler because so many of the words have the same endings as opposed to in English where they don't. So we kind of have to, if we're doing it in English, we kind of have to fake it and go for more views. But in a lot of cases, yes, there is rhyme or assonance, dissonance, lots of different things going on. It really does depend on the form. And there are so many forms. There's a giant flowering of poetic forms in the 16th century as well. Yes, I would be happy to publish the slides. And I will put that link wherever they tell me to put that link. But yes, I am more than willing to and happy to share those. And I will get the bibliography added because it should have been there. But apparently I was not thinking as well as I had planned to be thinking last night when I'm like, I'll just polish it, just get a few things, add a few more, and apparently I didn't take out nearly as much as I'd wanted, and I didn't keep stuff that should have stayed. I apologize for that.
It happens.
Teaching so many classes today. I'm not surprised you were a little overwhelmed. I took your class on Lodovico Domenici this morning, and I was not going to take this poetry class. And I was so inspired by that class this morning that I am taking this one.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I love this period because we are starting to hear women's voices, their own voices, rather than voices through other filters. And I think that is the most astounding part of this particular period. We do have earlier on, you know, some of the Trevere poetry that we do hear some female voices, but the sheer amount that we get in this particular part of the 16th century is, it's just such a wealth, and it's great to go in and look at those, and the fact that we know who they are rather than earlier on where we know that this person might have been a woman, but we really don't know much about her, where we do actually have biographical information on these poets, and at least some of them, and thus we can match them up as part of their culture, and I think it adds additional depth. But, you know, I was also an English minor at one point, so that might be part of where I'm getting that from. All right, any other questions or anything else I can help with? Well, thank you folks for sticking around and listening to me and supporting this this event, which I'm super excited about. And
it will not be the last.
I'm glad to hear that. I am super glad to hear that. It's been one of those things that I really love. I actually serve as the chancellor for the University of Artemisia, and this part has been amazing to me, how much we have accessed, have access at this point, and getting to talk to new friends and find out new stuff and go down new rabbit holes, because I'm a research nerd.
Absolutely. Well, and enabling, it's not the same as meeting face to face, but if meeting face to face isn't practical, and there's a lot of people who have kind of been left behind with meeting face to face. So I'm glad that we've been able to be more inclusive.
Yep.
And this has been especially good because, you know, when you live in a kingdom, you know what the people in your kingdom have to teach, and that's what you get. But when you get to go to something, as I normally do, to Penzic, then I get to learn from so many people. But now with these virtual classes, I can learn from so many more people. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and I don't get to go to Penzic. It's one of those I will probably go eventually as a once in a lifetime trip, but it is, you know, it's a long trek cross country. So
I drive from San Francisco.
Yeah,
you're driving further than me, so
I go through Utah.
It's similar for me. I probably will go at some point, but it's I love Gulf Wars. Like, it's just so much my home that, you know, Penzic is fun. I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm sure I'll love it, but I know it can't replace Gulf Wars for me. You know what I mean? So I've actually already been talking to some of the other admins about going forward, having like a Penzic for those who don't go to Penzic. Courtesan College.
Well, thank you guys all so much for being here, and I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope you have a fabulous afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.